Hello, welcome to, I guess, another part of our kind of Session Zero series that we're doing for this new campaign.
0.01.
That's right. So we thought it would be fun because as part of some of the additional content we've been putting out on YouTube and stuff with regard to the roleplay prompts and things like that, we thought starting a new campaign like this gave us a rare opportunity to show off how they're supposed to be used and what sort of characters you can create if you take all of the disparate pieces of these questions and bring them together and being informed by your character sheet as well. So the plan for this episode is for myself and Callum to go through the questions that relate to his character, which is a Goliath Hermit Ranger, being Dugg'r Jotun. Is it Jotun or Jotunjagerstamme?
Jotun.
I thought it was Jotun, but I thought you said Jotun earlier.
Jotunjagerstamme.
Yeah, Jotunjagerstamme. Yeah. I thought it was Jotun, but then I doubted myself, as I'm sure will happen many times. But yes, Dugg'r Jotunjagerstamme, which is so much fun to say. So we're going to go through in order of, as I explained to Callum before we hit record, in the order of life. So species first, followed by background, followed by the questions related to class, and see what comes up. Before we get into those, though, Callum, and I probably should have prepared you for this before we hit record, but did you have anywhere notes on the kind of personality traits and things like that that we picked up on?
I do, in that I fortunately I've got a fairly good memory for those sort of things. So I've got his sheet that I was making alongside when we were rolling up, and then I brought it page 30 something. Yes. There we go. Yeah, I have them. I can remember what we chose.
Yes.
So yes, I have to hand.
Lovely.
Everything I believe I need.
Shall we start by just... we won't go through, obviously, all of the stats and details and things
Every
like that,
stat.
because we've got all that in the actual main Session Zero character creation section. But did you want to go through those kind of personality traits that were related to your highest ability score, your lowest ability score,
yes,
and your alignment as a starting point, just to remind
so
you
we rolled... to catch up, we rolled on the charts for the highest and the lowest. That's on page 39 of the new rulebook. And my highest stat, coming in at 16, I believe, was Constitution. And my lowest stat, coming in at a towering 5, was Charisma. So rolling on that, the 1d4, for Constitution, I got Hail, which we mean as strong and healthy. So he gives up. You look at him and go, yeah, he looks... I suppose in the same way that when you look at a rugby player, though they might be bulky, they don't look unfit.
Yes.
You go, that he can probably run 100 yards.
Yes.
He's got a good constitution. And then for charisma, we had that he was tactless. And I'm slowly developing the penchant within Bardic Quest for tactless individuals. One day I will play a tactful.
That does seem to be your MO a little bit, doesn't it?
Yes, it's escapist fantasy. I'm so tactful in life.
Okay, cool. And what was the alignment personality?
So the alignment we went for was lawful neutral, and I came to that based on the lawful by the fact that we looked at that as being he has a rigid code, not necessarily the law of every land that he's in. It's not a case of obey the law wherever you go. It's that he has his beliefs and his moralities and his ethics that he does not like to waver from. And then with neutral, I'd say he errs on the side of good, but the only reason that it is neutral is that he isn't necessarily I want to help everyone. He believes that everyone should be fairly independent, and he doesn't have quite so much. I don't think he'll have quite so much time for people he deems as fairly useless.
Yes.
They can't help themselves. They've got to help themselves. Pull yourself up.
Yeah, that almost...
You've got a sword arm, haven't you?
somewhat. I don't know if stoic is the right word, but stoic, pragmatic. That approach
Very
of-
pragmatic, I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
say. He is.
Okay. And so, what were the personality traits that came up from that? Can you remember?
So we got those for the visit. Yeah, I think he had pragmatic as his neutral one. Yeah.
Oh yes, I
he
think you did
was-
actually. Yes.
Yes, which is good because I think that's better than laconic is a difficult one to play in a game that requires you to be quite forward,
Yes.
but selfish and disinterested. Disinterested as well. Oh, that's you're gonna you better have some of the party members dragging you along.
Yeah. So we got pragmatic, and what was the
Lawful was judgmental, which I think is so he's judgmental and tactless, which is definitely going to go.
What a
really,
great
really well.
combination! What a great
Yeah.
combination! Cannot wait. All right.
It will certainly be fun
Yes.
to play because I don't get to be judgmental and tactless in my life. I have to be very
And it is
very, very polite and tactful.
That's right.
In my everyday life.
You get to use basically me as your theatrical punching bag.
I should be flipping off everything. Just there's a tattoo of the middle finger on his chest.
Obviously, a little bit of a disclaimer before we go through these questions, that these questions are very much, this is a brainstorming session here between me and Callum. To a certain degree, the things are subject to change, as I'm sure those of you who watched Bardic Quest Campaign 1 know that once a character hits the table, molds the character, even as strong as that vision might be that you have for that character. Once the interaction with the other party members kind of kicks in, that then starts to guide things. So things are certainly subject to change.
When I rock up with my tabaxi accountant.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to start then, as I mentioned, with the Goliath questions. These questions are about bringing the Goliathness of Dugg'r to the fore in terms of your role play. So things, if you are playing along at home and you're creating your new Goliath character, these are things for you to consider in terms of how your Goliath might show up in the world to make them seem a little less just another form of human. Starting with one that is very much written down on your character sheet. Just remind us what your giant ancestry is and how that's going to manifest in you physically and in terms of your abilities as well.
So, being from up in the hills and mountains of your good world, he is descended from hill giants, the most aggressive, though smallest of giants. They are broad, they are strong, they are hungry, and I think that he certainly has a hunger within him for both adventure, and I imagine a good appetite on him as well. I think with hill giants, that it's their hardiness and was what attracts me, and their ability. The ability, of course, is very cool. The ability to knock things prone allows for quite a lot of tactical flexibility within a low magic campaign, particularly where we're going to have to. I'm not sure how much you've shared so far, but I know I can tell without giving anything away, this is going to be a brutal campaign.
Oh yeah, I haven't yet shared the.
I won't say anymore, but
I don't think I've shared.
It's going to be squeaky.
Yeah, I didn't mention. I don't think I mentioned, did I, in session 0?
That's up to you.
I kept that. I think I kept that quiet. But yeah, we're using some variant rules, is all I will say.
If you thought things got squeaky bum during, it's going to get scary biscuits, and so we are going to have to work together tactically, not tactlessly, within combat but still creatively. We're not just turning in, going to have to work like a humorless SWAT team within this, but we are going to have to be very careful in the way that we interact with violence in this world.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons that I've gone there. Their hill giants are hardy, they're tough, and that represents him more than I think any of the more exotic, shall we say, giants.
Sure.
That exist in the world.
How might that, and again, this is, of course, subject to change for you, Callum, but have you given much thought to how specifically being a hill giant may affect the way he looks? Because obviously, when people think of Goliaths, traditionally they think of the stone giant.
Yeah.
Goliath.
So I think his Goliaths are more stout than a Goliath would be if you think more of the giants from the animated BFG.
Yes.
They're broad of chest. I think that's maybe a foot or two shorter than a foot shorter than you'd normally picture a Goliath. They are hardy, stocky things that live for hunting and wrestling and that sort of thing. So
a little less chiseled than, say,
he's packing a keg, not a pack, not a six pack. Like but it's solid. It's
a good dad.
I'm saying think Eddie Hall, the strong man. If you Google Eddie the Hall, known as the Beast, that is what we're looking at. You look and you go, that's muscle. You know that's muscle, but it's not bodybuilding. It is
like Mark Henry style stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that kind of strong man rather than bodybuilder.
Yeah. Cool. All right, nice. Okay, next question. How does Dugg'r feel about his connection to the first giants and all of that may entail? Now, obviously, we've not really talked much about the impact of giants specifically in this campaign setting.
No.
But I know that you've given some thought on giants, and we have had a brief discussion.
Yes, just prior to this, we were having a little chit chat. So, Goliaths. Some people, I think, when they see Goliath as being giant kin, and they think of Dragonborn being dragon kin, and they think, oh, they must have a familial connection or be servants of the kind. But that is not the case with Goliath and giants. Giants, obviously, it might depend giant to giant and type of giant, but generally, giants look down, literally, on Goliaths and see them as weak, as shameful. That they are this weak, small version. That's like the dilution of the blood, as it were. And Goliaths don't take kindly to this because they're very proud. And particularly, I think this resonates with Dugg'r. Dugg'r, for a Goliath, is not particularly tall. And so he feels that every day, where from his kin, who literally look down on him and see him as not that useful, despite the fact that he is a big, strong boy. And so I think he connects strongly to that animosity for all things big, really, things bigger than him. Their tribe anyway are hunters of big things, of big game, but yeah, anything that's big and dangerous, he wants to prove himself. He's that, despite not being a small guy, he's that small guy at the bar that is, if there's going to be a fight, he's going for the biggest guy. Okay. So I think that connection with giants, if he dreams of fighting the giant one-on-one,
just for the kudos and to prove himself kind of way,
because he is the bigger man. Don't get the ruler out. He's the bigger man.
Judge me by size, do you? All right, cool. So next question of the Goliath-based questions: what motivates Dugg'r to, quote, seek heights above those reached by his ancestors? Which is a direct quote, if I remember correctly, from the Player's Handbook.
For him, Goliath society, we've not homebrewed a lot away from the classic view of the Goliath on both the 2014 and the Forgotten Realms stuff.
At least on a foundational level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're not locked. Obviously, it's a different world and that sort of thing. But in terms of their makeup and their society, Goliaths have a real thing for everybody having a purpose and everybody being useful. You have to be useful. On the rare occasion that a Goliath survives to old age, to the point where they are infirm and useless, they have a lovely ceremony and they are let off. They walk off into the wilds on their own because they're no longer useful. And he desperately, more than anything, wants to be useful, to be seen as a warrior and a hunter. But because of his shorter stature within the tribe and being seen as a bit of a runt, he has been given less than glorious jobs and roles in the run-up to this campaign. And this his call to adventure is to go out there and prove that he can be every bit as much the hunter as the greatest of his tribe, to return and lead hunts and fell the greatest of foes. He's got a chip on his shoulder and he's going to stab everyone with it.
Yes, that's always a good start for a.
He's got a lot to prove.
That chip on the shoulder is always a good point to start. Okay, good. This is taking shape now, which is nice. This will be an interesting question, given what you've already set out. But obviously, think about it in as much context as you can.
Yeah.
But how does your towering presence as a Goliath impact your interactions with others?
Are you taking the piss? I think he doesn't. I think he thinks he doesn't care that much what other non-Goliaths think. How true that is, we'll find out on the table.
Yes, I guess so. Hey.
I think his slightly less than towering presence will be an interesting thing, because you may have people who that he's the first Goliath they've ever seen and they thought he'd be taller. And then you might have ones who are fairly familiar with Goliath and have not seen a fairly short for a Goliath before. And he probably won't take too kindly to people pointing that out. So I think it is going to be, I think him breaking preconceptions of the Goliath will be something that will impact his interactions with others.
And just follow-up questions, which are all on the worksheet. Would you put him perhaps in the kind of keywords that I used were intimidating, protective, or perhaps misunderstood?
I think you can tell by his build that he's strong, but then we've in our society is the same. People see height and they think, oh, if someone's short, they'll pick on them, ignoring the fact that they've got massive arms. Because they think something, unless you're a professional fighter, height doesn't come massively into a lot, unless you're trained. So I think there's probably people that have bitten off more than they can chew with him, because they may think, oh, he's not that tall. He's got low center of gravity for a Goliath, and he's a strong. He's more dexterous than his kin. He is more. All of his kin are stocky, so he's not particularly stocky for his lot. It just looks stockier because he's a bit shorter. But he's a lot more explosive in his speed and stuff than some of them. He is a more dexterous boy.
A dexterous boy.
But he's still stronger than a human. He can still lift a lot more than it looks. And it looks more impressive because he's shorter.
Yeah, I suppose so. Hey. Yeah. What's the cartoon? There's a cartoon I'm thinking of now, and I cannot picture the character. But it is this short. It's probably like Dexter's Lab or something, where he's like drank something to give him like flexi muscles, and he's like lifting up a car. I don't think it's quite that. I don't think it's quite that small, but that's what I'm picturing in my head. Okay, cool. Going back to the history of giant kind, how does Dugg'r feel, or how does he view the rather mutually destructive conflicts that giant kind have found themselves in throughout the ages? And does he feel any obligation to try and resolve such conflicts or avoid them entirely or anything like that?
I think, without delving too much into the sort of story of the Goliaths within your realm, because everything is subject to change, the Goliaths themselves do have an agreement or an obligation to that. But with that, and with his relationship with giants, an antagonistic relationship between them and giants, that's one of those things where, with them not being a part of regular society, and they're be very misunderstood, and I imagine there are a lot of mistruths and half-truths and rumors and myths about Goliaths within the world, as naturally happens when you don't have exposure to a type of person. It happens all the time in our world.
Yeah.
And so I think there'll probably be people that think of them as, oh, you can't trust them, they're part giant, which is probably the most offensive thing you could probably think of them. Like, that's why that's the root of our problem with giants.
Right,
like, don't lump us in with them. If you've ever been on the end of something where you've been part of a group that's been targeted for something, and you're within that group and not part of the problem.
Yeah.
It's like when I was 21, I was an agency worker at a very well-known bank that went down in 2008 because of buying some toxic shares and caused the economy to crash, and we had protesters outside our building and shouting at us. I work in the post room. Do you think it was me? We're losing our jobs. I'm more annoyed with them than you are. Things have got more expensive for you. That's happened to me, and we're losing our jobs.
Yeah.
So that thing of being associated with something that actually you hate more than other people do,
yes,
I think will be a conflict within him to be tarred with a brush.
Yes.
That's what also wanted to be proud of the fact that they're Goliaths, of who they are. Having that, trying to be proud of an identity that some small-minded people, maybe not the majority, we don't know, will not respect or have aversion or fears about.
Yeah.
But I intend to have fun with that.
Of course. I wouldn't have it any other way, Callum. And you've briefly touched on this already, I think, but what's directly Dugg'r's relationship with physicality and strength? Is it something he revels in, or is it something that he sees more as a sort of responsibility?
I think that will be an interesting two-sided coin in the campaign, because within his tribe, he is not particularly impressive physically, or even in his strength. He's faster and nimbler, perhaps, and so he has adapted to his shortcomings but having left the tribe, those things aren't necessarily true compared to some of the other races.
Sure. Yeah.
Him stronger than most. He's faster than most. He might look it, but he's an athlete compared to the average person walking around.
Yeah.
So that will be an interesting dynamic.
Whereas in amongst the common folk, he is a specimen. Yeah. And yet in amongst his own people, he is a, what's it? Hang on. No, I was going to use an analogy and it was completely the wrong one. No, I've lost it. I was halfway there. It was right on the tip of my tongue. But yeah, he is like a god amongst men when he is outside of his own people, and yet a complete runt.
He's a small fish in a smaller pond.
Yeah, I was kind of analogy I was trying to grasp for, but it didn't quite land in my head. But yes, essentially, yeah. Cool. All right. Now, of course, you have somewhat of and I suppose it's less the case out of probably all of the giants, the giant ancestries with the hill giant one, but Goliaths have some form of supernatural boon.
Yes.
Depending on which giant they are descended from. So how is it that Dugg'r would use his supernatural boon in daily life and combat, but how might it be useful outside of combat as the main spirit?
Being quite strong is just generally quite useful.
Yeah.
I think his boon being his ability to knock things prone, as I've made clear in this, and by the fact that I have picked up every single piece of hunting related equipment I could spend my pennies on. I'm starting the game with no gold, but I am rich in nets and traps. I intend to make use of all of the excellent work that the designers have put into all of these cool utility items that aren't just going to sit at the bottom of my backpack.
Yes. They're now fully baked in 2020.
Yeah. And that knocking thing as a hunter, being able to knock your prey prone so you can move in for the kill, I think is probably the most useful of all of the. You've got ones that do fire damage, don't want to ruin the meat. You've got lots of different things that they can do. But I think that his ability. I'll be interested. I need to have a think about how that translates into ranged attacks, because obviously it makes sense in strength, with it being that you can knock things prone in a melee. You're tapping into a bit of strength and you're shoving them down. I need to think about whether it's something about the fact that hill giants have that sort of low cunning and they are the most aggressive in terms of going out and getting food, that perhaps they've got an eye for weakness in terms of hitting a joint, kneecapping an enemy so that they can catch up with them, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's less that he's just strong and he can knock people down, and it's more about the fact that they have that primal hunter in them that they tap into. They see, if I aim there, whether it be with a kick, a spear thrust, or a crossbow bolt.
And I think specifically with the Dugg'r being a ranger class, I think that makes complete sense to feed into both narratives of the ranger as the hunter and the Goliath as the kind of primary hunter, the top of the food chain in the hills thing, with at least with the hill giant being that kind of ancestry. I think it feeds into both narratives that way. So that would make a lot of sense. But yeah, give that one some thought, because there might be an interesting angle.
Be something to play with there.
Yeah. Now, obviously, as you become stronger, as you level up as a Goliath, you later unlock the ability to transform magically, albeit with primal magic in this campaign setting, but essentially grow into a larger form. You basically make yourself a mini giant as you move from a medium sized creature to a large sized creature. So what role might that, when it becomes available to him, how might that play into his identity?
I think it will certainly play into that conflict he has as his sort of short Goliath syndrome, if you want to call it. Short giant syndrome. That sort of, I am big, yes, finally, like that's something he'd been hoping for. I also think, because I think that for him that will be a big event, him getting that, because I think being able to, as well as being like an iconic thing within the class, I think societally, in my head, that's almost like a coming of age thing. And because he hasn't been taken on the hunting parties, he's been kept doing lesser duties within the camp. He perhaps hasn't progressed as far as his peers. That's sort of reason for why is your character level 1? Why is your... It isn't necessary that, it's because he's super young. He just maybe hasn't had his chance yet. And so perhaps he's that late bloomer. He hasn't yet got... And so I think that'll be a big thing for him personally. But I also think that will really affect him. There's going to be so many situational things where if we look in terms of mechanically what that actually does for him. Let's get to Goliath. That's class first, isn't it? Then we'll
see if I can beat you to it.
See if you looking in the index can beat me just randomly flicking.
No, I randomly flicked too.
I'll race you.
I've got there. So, as a bonus action, you change
what page? What page?
It's page 192.
I was in completely the wrong place.
So it's a transformation that lasts for 10 minutes. Or until you end it. No action required. Which gives you advantage on strength checks. Your speed increases by 10 feet as well. And you can't use it again until you finish a long rest.
So there's a few things that are going to be really useful with that. There's going to be, I think, quite a few situational aware things. So your speed increases by 10 feet. A Goliath's speed is already 35 feet, which that extra 5 feet doesn't sound like a lot, but if the opponent has 30 feet, that's you staying out of combat with them if you want.
Yeah.
You add 10 more feet to that, and you are 1.5 times as fast as the average. And that can be used for escape or for chasing down.
Yeah.
the average person, if he turned big and angry, the average person's not getting away from it. That's a 90-foot dash.
Yeah. You don't want that charging at you.
You're lucky he's not a monk. Holy moly, that's
the Goliath monk. That's a
Um,
combo.
Yeah, but then you've also got the fact the advantage on strength checks, which are things like grapple, being able
wrestling alligators.
Yeah, giant alligator, maybe. Yeah, he'll be wrestling big old things. He's got so many opportunities for big epic struggles.
Yeah,
and I think that is also that's his goal. His big epic struggles. In fact, it's part of Goliath culture. So one of the reasons Goliaths rarely live till old age is because they're super competitive. In a fair way, they will never cheat. So they have a strict honor code. But the person they're most competitive with is themselves. So if one of them kills a young green dragon, he'll go, "Yeah, I've killed a young green dragon." Whoa! And then the next day, I must find an adult green dragon. And they rarely live till they're old because they eventually find their ceiling. And he's out. He's not got a death wish by any means, but he wants to show what he can do and conquer what he can. And I think that large form is going to play a big role in that.
Yes. At level 5, I think that comes out for you.
Yes.
It'll be fun. So that's just as you move out of tier 1 into tier 2. You start becoming a hero of the wider kingdom at that point. And your reputation starts to precede you a little. Cool. Now, obviously, with Goliaths, they are, as we've already said, Goliaths anyway are a bit of a specimen amongst the common folk. So how does Dugg'r navigate the duality? I'm sure we'll come into this a little bit more when we get into your background questions. But generally, like, that duality of being part of the common society whilst also being a descendant of a giant, is that something where he feels a sense of belonging, or does he feel that duality a little bit more generally?
I think he will navigate it tactlessly. I think is my prediction. I think this question particularly is one that we'll find out on the table.
Yeah.
Because as we'll pick up with the background, though he has left Goliath society to go out into the world and prove himself, he has not interacted a lot with the outside world. And so I think we'll see in a different way than with. I think we will see him discovering a lot about things because he's probably got a lot of misconceptions about non-Goliaths, and their silly ways, their silly, unpragmatic ways. And I think that's where I think his judgmental aspect will come in, because the more civilized society gets, the more traditions and rules they adopt that seem alien to anyone that wasn't brought up with them. We have a lot within our society that if you actually sat and thought about it, you go, "What on earth do we do that? That's preposterous. That's the way it is. That's the way it's done. It's the sign of a civilized society." Yeah. He will not have any truck for any of. He's very pragmatic. If it seems daft, why do you wear these impractical clothes? What will you do if a giant wolf runs in here? How will you run? So I think he'll have an interesting lens to go out, and him learning to navigate that side will be, I think, his journey, as it were. He'll have his heroic journey, and then I think he'll have his mortal journey as well, in terms of learning to be more than just part of a small cog within his society.
Yes.
To being a larger cog of the outside world.
And I think in many ways, because this is obviously a new setting, I guess it will be interesting to see how the setting comes about through the eyes of somebody who is somewhat isolated from so much of it. and in some ways could act as a bit of a vehicle for the audience to see the world through.
Well, that's something I hoped, because one thing that I wanted someone that's got wanting to explore, not necessarily in a different way to the way Fluff is. So Fluff in our Flan episodes is so bright-eyed and just wants to learn about everything's fascinating.
Yeah.
Whereas I think from Dugg's side it would be more he wants to understand because so much doesn't make sense and it seems a bit silly and a bit daft. But also he is an explorer by trade, as it were. He's out here literally every step he takes is a further one from home, as it were. It's all new territory for him. And so with this lovely homebrew world you've made for us, I wanted to have a character that can be exploring and wants to find out stuff. Wants to make you flick into your notes and create and pull lore out of your bum.
Yes. I imagine there will probably be a lot of that.
Yeah.
All right. Final question. And again, this is something that you've already touched on, but maybe there's something else that you've not spoken about yet in relation to this last Goliath related question is what challenges or prejudices has Dugg'r faced due specifically to his lineage and size? And have those experiences particularly shaped his outlook on both the world and his role within it?
Yeah. So I won't dwell on this one too long because I think we've largely covered it. I think it is that going from being seen as one thing and then almost flip reversed to being seen as the other. Although to any that have experienced Goliath, perhaps they will be like, "Oh no, he's not particularly big." he's a bit of that Braveheart where they like William Wallace is 7 feet tall. I heard they love. I think that will. He's got two chips on his shoulder. Really, he's got the being associated with giants, and then him not being what people expect when they think of, especially ones who perhaps their interaction with Goliath, maybe in our world, they are more, as with the audience, they are more used to your noble looking stone giant types. But his tribe have been busy. In the depths of the mountains doing their job, and so they're like, "That's the Goliath. That's not like the ones I. That's what a Goliath look like."
Right? Yeah.
And so I think he'll have that. He's like, "I am one." So
this is it.
Thought you'd be taller. Well, I'm not. Sounds like a you problem. Yeah. So I think there'll be. It also, I realise I'm also giving you plenty of ammunition, which is good.
Yes, my creative.
You've got full toolbox of ways to poke me during this.
I'm already calculating as we're sitting here talking about it again. Okay, interesting. All right, so those are our Goliath-based questions, and I think we've really got a good sense of how Dugg'r fits into that culture. So moving on to kind of like the next stage of life, if you will. We know obviously what your species is, but then it's like later stages, pre-adventuring days, how you've spent much of your life, which in this case for Dugg'r is he has been a bit of a hermit. These next questions, now you've not seen these questions.
I've not
at all, because at the time of recording I've not done a video on any of the backgrounds, though I will probably put those out fairly soon. But so I'm going to go through these, and this is probably going to be the most brainstormy bit. Is going to be these questions. First question: why did Dugg'r choose to live in seclusion, or was it a choice that was made for him?
I think that initially, in the same way that if you ever see a house cat get out the front for the first time, it doesn't go bolting down the end of the garden. It gets about 3 feet out of the door, and then it's going to slowly acclimatizing to what's going on. I think there's an element of that. I think he's left his homeland, and he hasn't quite built up the gumption to, or the desire really. Like he's on a mission. He's going to hunt stuff. He's not going to find that in a city.
Right. Yeah.
He doesn't want to hunt rats. He wants to hunt big game out in the. So he's in the wilderness, away from society where you can find larger and larger stuff to hunt. He hasn't quite yet, I don't think he's quite yet clicked with him that if he engages with society, they can point him in the direction of threats, because word travels.
Sure.
He's not going to find a dragon just walking around in the woods, hoping to find some dragon tracks.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think the reason he's hunting is because he's working his way. Yeah, and he's fairly ignorant of the world. He knows the wilds. He knows that to a certain extent. He can do these things.
Yeah.
He is not at all adjusted for society.
Sure.
So I think that's why he's put himself in that sort of space, because it's a little bit of home comfort.
Sure. I guess as well, to be more specific to Dugg'r here as well, because obviously we know he's a ranger. We know he's probably out hunting. So follow-up question is, how secluded has he been from Goliath society specifically? Not necessarily civilization, but like his tribe, and because being a hermit implies that he's probably not spent much time with them either.
No, I think the hermitage he's in now is much more by choice and is much more of a literal hermitage. I think when he was within Goliath society before, so Goliaths are nomadic.
Yeah,
they will build camps and small, I believe the term is redoubts, temporary fortresses and things like that as they travel around. I imagine he's one of the ones that when they're traveling, he's on the outskirt of the traveling force. So he's with them, but he's always been a bit of an outsider because he gets shunned and looked down upon by some of the others. He doesn't need to be the first to get to the new camp because he's not going on the hunting party. He'll be helping set up camp. He'll be doing those sort of things. And so I think he's gone from being a more metaphorical hermit to a self-imposed actual. He's used to being on his own. He's used to dealing with that. So it'll be interesting to see him coming out of his shell in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Particularly when you have the dynamics of a new party as well.
Also, if you're a very self-sufficient, when you meet these really self-sufficient people who can go days without talking to a person and just be perfectly happy reading books and doing that sort of thing. Them in a party scenario, about 2 hours in, and they're like, I think this is a bit much for me. I'm a bit done, to be honest. My social battery is drained.
Yeah.
I think he's got a low social battery.
Yeah,
which
is probably where the tactlessness comes from.
Yeah. He's not well versed in it. He hasn't been involved in fun in a lot of things. So he's very direct, very coded. He didn't learn about not saying what you mean.
Yeah. Next question I've got, which is inspired by the last sentence that the player's handbook says about the hermit, which is, the solitude allowed you to spend many hours pondering the mysteries of creation. So the question is, in this solitude, what truth, mystery, or question of some kind did he or has he dedicated his solitude to pondering?
I think there are a few things there. Let me just get up my Google Drive. So a little look into something I've always done when I'm coming up with a character. Watch me not be able to find it now. Yeah, there we go. Always try to, whether it be a character in D&D or when I've been acting, I try and think about what their view on the world is. And so I try and come up with a few little quotes. So I think he does. I don't think he thinks of himself as a philosopher at all, though he is quite wise. I think naturally being on his own, he muses about stuff. I think there'll be a lot of stuff he hasn't mused on at all because he doesn't deem it worth musing.
Sure.
And because he's lived on his own, I think a lot of his musings are probably one-sided. He hasn't had the growth afforded by debate.
Yeah.
He's debated within his own conflicted thoughts.
Sure.
Not really anything else. So he probably feels quite headstrong about it. But I've got a few little things that he's put down that he's so things like a shield protects nothing if it's hung on the wall. He's got that view of everything must be practical. He tries to live his life very practically. Ornamentation is fine. He's not anti it, but why is it to show that you killed that thing? He'd be very confused by a noble wearing fur of an animal they didn't kill. Why?
Right, yeah.
What's the point? No, what's the
Yeah.
why are you wearing it?
Yeah.
And so I think he's one of the ones that I think will come into is that there are those who hide from the world behind walls and those who ride out to master it. And I think that's that's a big driver for him. So I think he does dwell a lot on thoughts, and hopefully I can come out with some nonsense as we're going around that sounds like John Cena's Twitter. But probably less so at the moment. That is that kind of he thinks it's philosophical. He thinks he's got a good point, but he's actually needs to broaden and be challenged and have his views on things shaped and tested.
Yeah.
To learn some tact.
Yeah.
Tact. He's that perhaps some of the behaviors and things that he doesn't show have their purposes and have their uses. Currently, he thinks there is one way to skin a cat, and it is the right way. The way I do it.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily mystical, philosophical things in that respect, but just pondering the logistics and meaning of life generally.
I think with you say with the spiritual, I think because you've discussed about primal magic being the only magic force still around, and I think that something that is interesting about Goliath is that their society is around primal magic, so they've not been as affected over the centuries as though they've never been high society, nor do they want to be, whilst the rest of the world has fallen into dark age. Fairly business as usual for the guys. Perhaps they've had to pull their weight a bit more to be like, but that view of magic of they don't have gods so much as primal spirits that are still around, and I don't see it through my lens of the Goliaths in this setting perhaps as necessarily being that they worship them, they pray to them, but it'd be more a reverence, a respect for what they represent. It's that thing of you honor the Lord of the Forest by not felling more trees than you need to. You honor the Beast Lord by not wasting any of the meat from the animal that you take.
Yeah.
They have a very inline view with nature, that they are both a part of nature,
yes,
and also masters of it. They don't have that human view of everything is here to serve me. Everything is a resource. They understand that if you overhunt the deer, you won't have deer next year.
Yes, which I think is it's one of those common sense things.
Yeah,
I think in a game like D&D, where it is we're going to stock up on our rations because we need to get across the mountains, and we don't know how long it's going to take. We need to stock up. It's a very interesting point of friction to have a character that's going to say,
hang on, we haven't finished. You're going to leave this perfectly good.
Right. Yeah.
There's perfectly good giant frog meat here. I am going to harvest.
Yes. Or indeed the other side of the coin, which is we don't know how long it's going to take us to get across. We have a way to preserve the meat. So whilst we have a field full of deer here, let's just kill them all, preserve the meat as best we can, and that will get us through, even if that's probably more than we need, to have a character go, no. You don't take more than you need. You take only what you need. would be
And
an
again,
interesting
with
point
him
of view.
being judgmental and tactless, he will bring that up.
Yeah.
I expect him to be outvoted a lot.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
So let's try and pick up the pace on this, because I don't want us to run too long on this section if we can.
He's also verbose.
Yeah, I feel like
I don't think he
all
is. That's going to
Goliaths-
be. I'm going to have to be less. I'm going to have to be less verbose. That's it.
Okay. So just quickly, what do you think for him in his time of isolation? What daily life would have looked like?
I think the maintaining of the gear that he has, keep it. Again, he's very practically minded. So I think maintaining of his gear, I think he's a man of routine.
Yeah.
So he'll wash, he'll do his exercise, he'll limber up, he'll do his exercise, he'll finish off the food of what he hunted yesterday. If he is drying up some meat or whatever, he'll go and deal with that.
Yeah.
Then he'll go out, he'll go tracking, he'll be in the wilds for hours waiting for a kill.
Yep.
And then he'll every few days move on and change location. He might move several times hunting a specific. He goes, oh, there's a large predator, there's a large creature that I've not yet added. I'm hoping that as I think he'll change in his appearance as he goes on, because I was saying about what he looks like in terms of like adornments. He will keep trophies. He wants to show what he is.
Yeah. And for when he bumps into a fellow Goliath, being able to go, look at me.
Well, one of the things I've got written for him is a person's worth is in their actions, and he carries these trophies as proof of his actions.
Yeah.
Proof of his worth. I'm proving that I did this thing. I'm the guy that did that.
Yeah.
And so him going after big game. A daily life will be a series of routine, but then also upending things when he needs to. I think he travels light. I think he's got all of his gear and stuff, but I think a tent for him is little more than an animal skin over a couple of pieces of wood that can be collapsed and rolled up really quickly. I don't think he's going to be having a particularly high cost of living. He's not sleeping on the bed. He'll sleep on the floor in the alley so he can see the stars. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not going to fight. I don't think he'd know what to do with a pillow. If you found a goose for the pillow, he'd take the feathers. Like perfectly good arrow flights for them.
Yeah. Did he, in his, again, you've talked how his isolation, so this may be less relevant. His isolation is not necessarily I'm going off and camping on my own in the woodland, but more I'm going to just put my tent or whatever a stone's throw away from everybody else because I don't fit in. So this question may be a little less relevant, but as a hermit, did he have any visitors, and did those interactions shape him in any way?
I think he's probably in the areas that he's been. There's probably because he'll be away from society because he's hunting and people are noisy. And if you want to go and see deer, you don't just go to any piece of grassland near. You have to go a bit away to something that's a bit more quiet and secluded. And so I imagine most people anyone that's interacted with him has probably been local children from the nearest village who've run and been playing in the park and been playing out in the woods or something, only to have a guy covered in leaves suddenly get up and just get very angry with them because they're spooking away his prey that he's just spent 3 days catching up with. So I imagine, there's some. He's probably the origin of. Some people will grow up and they'll be like, that crazy guy in the woods. There's no crazy guy in the woods. I saw him, I did.
Yeah.
He was really big and broad.
The wild man.
Yeah. I think it is that his interactions are majoritively people have been pests. May have a meaning to or not. But it's inconvenient that they're there. If he wanted to, it'll be interesting the first time. I think that maybe is how he's introduced. We don't know. Him having to go into society, whether it be that he needs something that he cannot make out of bone and twig and stone.
Yeah.
It be that he encounters someone that can actually give him a lead on something worth hunting rather than deer and wolves. It's something that, so it'll be interesting to see what interactions actually pull him into.
Sure.
Because I don't think he's not averse to. I'm very careful not to build a character that's averse to adventure.
Of course. Yeah.
You don't want to bring, it can be a danger with a hermit to be a character that doesn't want to be involved and just wants to be on their own. He has his hooks for there are plenty of carrots to offer him to draw out. He has things that he wants to do. Yeah. His current tactics for getting that involve not being away from people.
Sure.
And but as we can see, he's tactless. He's going to have to learn.
Yeah. What's his relationship like with the natural world specifically? I think you touched on this maybe with the primal spirit side of things, but like animals and nature, how does he feel about all of that sort of stuff?
I think he's grown up with respect for nature, in the way a lot of nomadic societies are. There is that thing of, we are temporary here. We taking only what you can, being respectful to, yes, you killed that deer, but it's not, whoa, I killed that deer. It's, I've taken this creature's life. In return is giving me life. I don't think it feels too profound, though. I don't think he's that, I don't think he's particularly spiritual. He's probably very spiritual compared to the outside society that are now godless, and that, so he actually has more of is zealous compared to them. But he's not saying prayers over the animals he kills and things like that. We may in respect for it and just treat it. He never shows any cruelty to an animal. I don't think he has no disdain for nature or anything like that. He is very much, he's part of it, and it is part of him.
Part of the great circle of life.
It's a wheel of fortune.
That's right. And again, I think a lot of these next few questions you've touched on already, actually, which is good. So maybe we can breeze through some of these ones quite quickly. His time alone as a hermit, has it changed the way that he's viewed people and society at all?
So I think it will be interesting to see. I haven't yet decided on how long he's been away. Certainly not enough to get to level 2. Enough to get to level 1, shall we say. I think he'll have spent some time, and it will actually getting to do hunting that he was not allowed to do. I imagine as we'll touch on with some of the skill things, he's had to do a lot of that in private. Sure. There's a lot of self-learning because they wouldn't go along. So I think he's on quite a steep self-discovery initially, and he's still muddling through. I say that he's a hunter and he's this. I don't think he's particularly good at the moment. Do you know what I mean? His step up in hunting is from like rats to deer. And rabbits and things like that.
Yeah, at level 1, it can still be a struggle to fight a beast.
That's his step up at the moment. He really is just finding his feet because he's not been involved before. So I think he's still getting used to his literal hermitage.
Sure.
But he's probably enjoying being on his own without the derision of others.
Yeah.
It's probably quite freeing for him at the moment. And so it's a brief holiday before he's surrounded by people again. That hopefully, or at least if they might not gel with him super well, they'll probably gel with him better than people back home. He's probably quite nice, actually. They've called me names.
So I'm going to use that to segue into the next question, which is, what do you think? And again, obviously, there'll be quest hooks and things like that, and you're introduced to the campaign. But what do you think, and again, you've touched on this already, but what do you think would finally bring him back into the wider world?
So into the wider world, I think it is that he is someone that if you mention that, a huge, terrible beast. He's their danger. Anything that other people are running away from is a opportunity for him. And I think that is his thing. He wants opportunities to prove himself. And there are two ways that you can do that, with trophies or witnesses. It's all very good. It's all very good, like proving stuff to himself. Yes, I killed that ghost out in the wilderness, but it left no trophy and there was no one there to see.
Right.
I can't take that back to my tribe and be like, look at me. I'm Dugg'r Ghostbuster.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that thing is, and it touches on another aspect where, and I'm going to withhold a bit of information about him, is that we know two of his names. They have three names. His name is Dugg'r, named by his parents, and his clan are the Jotunjagerstamme. Goliath's middle name is given to them by their tribal chief and can change at any time. And it's usually based on what they do within their role. So sometimes it will be quite specific. There'll be Skywatcher or something like that if they have that role. But then it could be Land Scourer or something like that. I won't reveal what his name currently is, but he wants it changed.
Okay, that'll be a fun.
And so he wants, and he needs evidence for that. He needs to bring the receipts.
Yes.
So I don't think he will be for a hermit. I don't think he will be a hard one to lure into the outworld. Just give him something that he can skin, or that people can write a song about.
Yeah, something with an impressive looking skull.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a couple more here. And I'm just trying to see what we have or haven't covered out of these so that we don't overrun too much. Okay, here's an interesting one. I might skip a couple because I think we've covered them.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll make this the last one on the hermit, though there are two more, but again, we've touched on them. Does, fast forwarding a little here, because presumably as we start the campaign, he's going to be coming back into the wider world for whatever reason, which I now have a few ideas for. Would the quiet life of his hermitage be something that he would miss? Or do you think that might be something that he might actually actively be running away from?
I think a little bit of both. I think there will be times where he will pine for the forest and the hermitage, where he doesn't have to deal with the nonsense of the wider world and of the cities and society and things like that.
Yeah.
But then I think also he's experienced so little of the world, and his world isn't a particularly happy one in terms of where I think he's muddled through, and I don't think he certainly doesn't have a victim mentality or anything like that, but he has come from quite a hard world to escaping that and being on his own sort of thing.
Yeah.
It depends on what's in front of him. If he achieves kinship with others, that's going to be a whole journey for him. Finding he's by no means banished from his tribe or anything like that. He finding a new tribe of his own, not forsaking his old one, but having that sort of something, achieving what he was hoping to get back home.
Yeah.
Whilst he's on the journey doing it, is something that I think there'll be certainly moments where he will loathe having ever come out of the woods. Sure. But then other times where he's gone, if I hadn't, I'd never have experienced this. Mm-hmm. That's the journey I hope he goes on.
Yeah. And
we want him to grow. We want him to,
and we love a found family in D&D.
Yeah,
we love a found family. Cool. All right, that's the background stuff. So now we're bringing it much more closer to the here and now, as he's a low-level ranger here. Starting again, all of these questions are available on the Patreon worksheet, and there's a video that goes through the questions as well, so I can link to that. It'll be somewhere. Starting with the first question about being a ranger, what drives him to protect the wilds?
I think it is a mixture of expectation not just from his, well, not so much from his society, because his society doesn't expect it of him, and that's what annoys him. They expect it of others. He wants to be like others. He wants to be just as good as them. So I think there's that competitiveness. But then I think there's also a societal expectation upon the Goliaths. This is what they do, and if you don't do it, you're not a good you're not a good Goliath. And yeah, I think that's his sort of drive for it. This is what we are. It's so tied to their identity, protecting the wild from a Goliath perspective. It's it's protecting the wilds to a certain extent from those which would encroach upon it, because it is their hunting grounds. They are territorial. They roam, and they keep a balance of the nature. But then also they have their requirements to protect the softer, weaker parts of the kingdom.
Yes.
From the big dangers and to hunt the big things.
And in many ways, as part of the campaign setting goes, that is why the Goliaths are allowed to continue doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because there is this kind of agreement that actually over there in the hilly mountainous kingdom, which I will name drop here, of Cordrath, in that mountainous region, there are things that are quite high up on the food chain. And keeping those at bay is very much to the benefit of everyone in the wider kingdoms. And so that's what allows them their what's the word I'm looking for? Autonomy, as it were.
Yeah, exactly.
As a society or a tribal.
That's that's the reason we get to keep our autonomy. Yeah, you tell yourself that.
Yeah.
You just try and take it away.
You're right. So
we're doing you a favor.
Yeah, that's it. How did and this may be fairly self-explanatory, particularly for Dugg'r as a Goliath, but how did he learn his skills?
Oh yeah, I've touched a little on this. I don't think it was from the traditional route. I don't normally you'd go out as a youngling with the hunting pack and you'd learn this. And I don't think he got to do that. I think he hunted what he could, whether it be mice, rabbits, things that were around and nearer to the camp. I think maybe some of the elders would take pity on him a little bit and be like, he wants to be useful. He wants to do that stuff. Yeah, we need rabbit. We can eat rabbit. We do need rabbits and stuff like that. So I think he's learned a lot by picking bits up here and there and by watching, rather than being a trained hunter.
Sure.
He didn't go through the cadet system, as it were. He's learned what he can from observing and practicing.
Yeah. And just as a fundamental part of his culture.
Yeah, absolutely. He's that thing of you pick up bits here and there, but he's not as far along as he'd like to be. I think he resents that. And so he's just trying to catch up. He's trying to show, look, I can do it. He wants to be able to go back and lead a hunt. And make them eat their words.
Yeah. Yeah. Does he have to use the old term, favored enemy? And
Big.
If so, why?
Yeah, favored enemy type. You say a certain creature type. I'd say that creature type is large and upwards. Bigger, the better. And if it's ideally so large he can't even take a trophy, people just need to tell people that he did. I think that's the thing. He'll salivate at the idea of killing something. That will come into balance with the balance of nature and kind of things like that. He's not going to be like, oh look, a field of large creatures. I just killed. But it is one of those things of, oh, a predator, fantastic, let's go. So I think there is glory in fighting like warriors or people there. Hunting is what he's here to prove he wants to do. So that's his kind of focus, big game. He's not going to be taking trophies from warriors. He's not going to be carrying around like a bunch of human teeth or something like that. You know what I mean? That's not doesn't seem quite honorable in that. Sentient creatures. There's something both that and me as a person, Callum, not particularly. I'm not really very interested in. He's not going to be walking around with a skin cloak. Do you know what I mean? We're not edgelording down that route. Thank you very much.
So as a ranger, he is going to have access to some tribal magics
Yes.
One of the few classes in this setting that has any access to any magic. So what role do you see magic playing in his abilities? Is it something that he sees as a gift from maybe the primal spirits? Is it something that he sees simply as a tool that he's learnt along the way? Or maybe an extension of something else? Maybe it's something that you play out as actually not necessarily being so magical and more a manifestation of his abilities, things like that. Because I always think that's an interesting thing with the Ranger.
Yeah, I think it's a mix. I think it's a mix of what I quite like about the Ranger is that for the most part, their spells are incredibly pragmatic spells. They all have a very clear purpose.
And they're not flashy either.
No, they are not. They are not. I think there may be some illusion spells, but they're not illusionists. It is not their. They're not creating fanciful firework things and light displays, and they are. I'm going to entrap that creature over there so that I can that mastery of nature. And I think that feeds into their view with the fact that their reverence to the spirits of nature and the natural world. Because they live in a world where magic, though absent, magic is real. The gods are real. Do you know what I mean? There's no debate over. You may have an anti-theist in the world, but not an atheist. They may be atheists now. They were like the gods stopped existing, but they did exist. They did at some point.
Yeah.
And so I suppose from his perspective, because he knows so little, he knows that they had gods and that they're no longer around. And so it might be that of maybe you just didn't respect them enough. It's not like you lost your magic. We've still got ours because we're doing. We're doing things the right way. It's not my fault that you guys lost your magic. Yes.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, actually. Yeah.
For him, it is a practical thing to master in the same way one masters a bow, or masters whittling, or skinning an animal, preparing meat. It is something that you practice and you use when it's necessary.
Yes.
It's not something to flex. I will say his fair play comes into it, I think, a bit. In a battle, he may use the spell, may use an aggressive spell or something like that. But he'll use it when he thinks he needs to. There's a bit about Goliath in terms of their fair play that I was reading, where if the Goliath is in one-on-one combat has disarmed an opponent, they may well throw their own weapon down to the ground to make the fight fairer. Do you know what I mean? It is that thing of if he's fighting a guy that he doesn't think he doesn't need to use Hunter's Mark, say, to mess this guy up.
Sure.
He's not gonna. If he does, respect.
Yeah, it's a nod to actually you are a worthy opponent.
You're a worthy opponent, exactly. It is that thing of it is practical magic. It is a part of being in his tribe. I think not all of his tribe have it, so I think perhaps I haven't hugely decided in terms of his familial backstory.
Yeah,
I think that potentially with him either being the son of the clan Skywatcher, which would be like a druid or shaman, or that by being in camp all the time and learning bits here and there from watching the hunters, he's also spent time with the Skywatchers and seeing what they've done, and he's picked up a little bit here, a little bit here and there. He's learned about the respect for he's listened to all the stories, and he knows the lore, as it were, of his people. So he's in a way, quite a good ambassador for his people, because
he knows it so
he's in touch with a lot of their stuff. And I think he meets that kind of, if you think of the other hunters in his tribe being mostly, if they were to be a class, fighters or barbarians or rogues, he's a bit different in that he has this connection to the magic.
Yeah.
Which
makes him a good fit.
He is, as the Rangers are, he is a hybrid.
Yeah.
And he's learned to adapt. He's learned to go, oh, I'm not the biggest, I'm not the strongest, but I can entangle.
Or I can be the most skilled.
Yeah, there's more than one way to fell a mammoth.
Indeed. How does he generally interact with animals? Not necessarily the animals that he's hunting, but other creatures, perhaps.
I think, for example, if he had made a kill and he's got a deer or something like that, and on the edge of his camp while he's eating, a wolf appears. If he has surfeit of meat, he might throw a bit of meat to that wolf. It's that thing of, I've got what I need. I'll hunt you another day. That's that sort of, here you go. To be continued. As it were. Today's not your day.
Yeah. Yeah. So not necessarily friendly to other animals, but
they
certainly
are there. No, I don't think he wouldn't keep a pet. I'll put it that way.
Sure.
If he did, it would be like.
So you've heard it here, folks. It's not going to be a Beastmaster Ranger when he fixes up.
He's not going to be a Beastmaster Ranger. We'll leave the rest up to. He is not a Beastmaster unless you bring me. You'd be like, oh look, here comes Spot the spectral puppy.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that is his arc.
He's not going to be.
He becomes a proper softie when it comes to.
I don't see him becoming a Beastmaster.
No.
I have ideas for which he will be, but that may change.
We have many sessions.
Hit the table. Yeah. One of the things that I like about the Ranger choosing their class at 3rd level, which I don't necessarily hold to all of the classes. Some of them, it doesn't make quite as much sense, and I think you should have an idea going in with what you're going to be at level 3 for some classes particularly. Ranger, I think, can explore a little bit.
Yeah.
I think you can decide to a certain extent with most of the subclasses what you want them to. You can feel it out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And he's going to feel it out. He doesn't know who he is yet. He's been told he's one.
I guess that's part of it.
And he has an idea. He has an idea of what he wants to be, but he hasn't found himself yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's this weird mishmash, and he's working it all out.
Yes. I have got so many things going through my head as you're saying all this stuff.
This is what we like.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Does his gear say anything about him?
He's prepared.
He has it.
Yeah, he has his gear. Yes, he has his gear. So, where's my infantry? So, he has the following things, all paid for. 0 coin, but he has arrows, bedroll, block and tackle, book, a philosophy book, which I've decided is that this book of philosophy is just his music.
Amazing.
It's self-published. It's copy 1 of 1. A chain, heavy crossbow, grappling hook, herbalism kit, hunting trap, lamp, map, net, oil, quarterstaff, scimitar, short sword, sprig of mistletoe, which is his druidic focus, studded leather, traveler's clothes. He's just got a load of really practical things in there. There's everything he owns has a purpose, and I think that is what it speaks.
He is Batman.
Nothing. The only things that are decorative are things that prove that he's used this equipment.
Sure.
He's not done anything because it's pretty.
Yeah. And probably invariably it's not pretty anyway.
No.
The ornamental stuff. How does he handle threats to his territory or nature as an individual?
Emphatically.
Okay.
I think depending on the situation, if I can handle this one-on-one, it will be a straight up, let's do this. If that's a threat, that's a big threat, he'll be smarter about it. You don't hunt a large beast by running at it head on. So he's not all bluster and he's not a fool. I think that is one thing. He may be of low intelligence, but he's not low on wisdom.
Yeah, he's got street smarts, if you will.
He doesn't know that tomato is a fruit.
He knows not to put it in salad.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, I think I think he may negotiate, not well. I think he.
I imagine negotiation is piss off.
I think he negotiates. I think he negotiates in the way that you get someone that is saying all of the facts and correct things in a debate, but he's losing the debate.
Right? Yes. Yeah.
But I'm right. Doesn't matter if you're right, you're losing. Like you are not winning people over.
Yeah.
But yeah, he wouldn't. He doesn't. He would warn people. I don't think he's an overtly aggressive person, and I think that's because hill giants so are. There is that thing of not wanting to appear as a savage, as something like that. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want people to.
He's a ranger, not a barbarian.
Yeah, exactly. I think he strikes first if he deems that to be the correct thing to do.
Yes,
but it won't be. I don't think there's any dishonor in a. There's no dishonor in an ambush or anything. It's hunting. But he's not going to be dirty tricks about it.
Yeah.
Not going to use deception to, and now I have a knife in your back.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be an interesting one to see where he falls within the group dynamic of approach to things.
Yes. Yeah, I think that might be where there is some friction. I can already see that when it's kill the monsters.
How about we distract them and then I slip there through? How about I distract them by punching them?
Yeah. When he goes about tracking his prey, what's his kind of like primary mode, if you will, or method for doing so? What's his first port of call when it comes to tracking?
I think he's still feeling that out with creatures. I think he'll have learned a lot of. I think he's probably got one of these things where he's heard a lot. He's absorbed a lot when they're saying, "Oh, you must when you're hunting X creature, you look for its droppings or you do things like that." But he hasn't practically dealt with any of these things, so I think he's still finding out a bit about that, and so that'll probably show in some low rolls. Probably at some points. Yeah. He finds some droppings and that is cool. I have learned nothing else other than they need more fiber. Yeah. So I think he wants to do all of the things. He wants to do look, the footprints here, and you can see that the fact that the footprints are still dry, that it's been a certain amount of time, but he's still feeling it out, and he is still. Most of the stuff that he will come across is stuff he's hunting for the first time. And he may have heard a thing here or a thing there, but he hasn't yet properly done it. But you just see, what tracks are these? And he's like, yes, these are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I roll low, I'll take a punt.
Yeah. It's obviously a vicious Knid.
Yeah.
All right. 2 more questions. Any valuable lessons that he's learnt specifically from surviving alone?
I think one that he will learn. I think he's learned probably that he's a lot more capable than people have given him credit for. The fact that he is out here, he is doing it.
Yeah.
I think a thing that he will more learn about surviving alone from when he joins a group is that some tasks are just better when hunted as a pack.
Right. Yeah.
A wolf can take down much bigger prey with a pack than it can on its own. It can't just be you and the thing sometimes.
Yeah.
As much as the glory of wanting to take a giant on one and be like, I did that. Practically speaking, probably not going to be how it happens.
Yeah, probably not.
And the guy that's the Goliath that's got some great beast's skull up on his wall was probably just he probably just got the killing blow.
Yeah.
Challenge the others and fought for it.
The killing blow is the most important one at the end of the day. That is the one that matters.
I thought you were going to say that is the one that gets the XP. I was like, don't you dare bring that.
Now that way madness lies.
Yeah.
That way madness lies. It's already bad. It's already bad enough when you introduce draconic gifts into a campaign, and the person who gets the killing blow gets the draconic gift. I've opened that can of worms.
I can't sleep on the road.
I closed that can of worms pretty damn quick, let me tell you.
Yeah.
All right, final question. What role do instincts play in his decisions generally?
I think early in the campaign, a lot, because he only really has his instincts on. He's especially the further out of the wilds and out of anything resembling Goliath society he is, the more he will have to rely on his instincts.
Sure.
I think there'll be a lot of calls where, and his instinct might be, I'm going to follow what X member of the party is doing because they seem to have a grasp on what's going on here.
Yeah,
or the instinct may well be wrong. He may completely misread a situation, being tactless, and be like, I think that this is what is happening and this is how one should react. Again, he's not reckless, so I don't see him just throwing fists straight away and stuff. I don't think he's going to be that kind of guy. But he might be the person that leads to those because he makes a bad instinctive call.
Yeah. Okay. Dugg'r is very clear in my head now, I think.
Good.
Were those
really helpful
for you?
Really helpful, because like I say, I've got this idea of this guy that I want to build and explore in the campaign. But yeah, I think that's why these are really good. They really get you to think a little. Things like, where does his magic come from? Things like that. Oh, that is quite a big, and that actually you go, from what we've just talked about earlier with his stuff, maybe he's learned it from here. Maybe why is he a ranger specifically and not a fighter, not this? Where does that side, and why isn't he a druid? And that would be really interesting, I think, to be how he connects with our druid.
Yes.
Who is connected to nature, but not necessarily with the same viewpoint.
We also know, and I don't want to tell you too much, but you do know this already, of course, that the druid in the party, theirs is a noble background.
Which I am fascinated.
I already know.
That's a heck of a gap year.
Yeah, I've read James's backstory, and it may not be what you think.
I am fascinated. The moment he said that it was druid and noble, I was like, I cannot wait to find out what that is. That is
he's come up with
such a good combo.
Yeah.
And this is what we want to do. We want to tell new stories, don't we? And that's with new characters. I think particularly when you've got very famous portrayals of certain species in D&D and certain classes, you want to carve your own path and do something new. So I'm interested to see where he goes with this. And I think that there's a lot to explore with him. That we have a lot more time than we had with Marvelous to explore and let him. And I think he's good, because I don't think he's going to be a character that needs to. He's not going to have a super fast arc. I think we can let him breathe and grow and gradually interact with the world, and we can find out together who he is.
Yes. And I think that's where I'm very excited for this campaign, even more, because what you guys come up with as your characters are going to shape much more of the story than previously when you're running through a published adventure where there's already established storyline. Here it's the storyline is obviously there's the world going on around your characters, and then there's what's important to your characters, and that is their storyline.
You have your sandbox you've designed, and you have your ideas for stories, but you have a lot more freedom to pivot into something that you think is going to be an interesting character thing, and be like, how can I tie this in? Okay, maybe they'll go this way and do this.
It's also going to be a challenge for me, though, because I don't have as much time between sessions to
No, you don't.
So I'm going to have to be very agile with my scheming, I think. But what you guys are already laying down is already giving me so much to play with.
This is one of the good things about this, is that you can. It's as much for you as for us, in terms of you being able to go, okay, yeah, I know what drive, we know what I can use to pull and push these characters around with.
100%.
I know you know how to bait your traps now.
That's right. Literally and figuratively. Hey. All right. Awesome. I hope you at home watching have found that helpful, just as an example. We're going to be doing more of these with obviously James and Anina, and when Isaac eventually comes out of his break.
His hermitage.
His hermitage, yes. Then hopefully we'll be able to squeeze one in with his character too. But yeah, hope you found that useful. And as I say, there'll be some more coming, so I'll catch you for those. But otherwise, very much looking forward to the beginning of this campaign, which is starting to really take some shape now. So
I can't. I'm so psyched.
Me too. Awesome. Thank you, Callum.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.